society to a person-oriented society, what is our role in that shift? Now, in order to go on that journey, we are going to talk about genocide. We are going to talk and see some examples of hate speech. So I just want you to be prepared for that. But first, we're going to talk about how the mirror ruined everything. Now, if you go far enough back, the only way to know what you looked like, what your face looked like, if you were a sighted person, was to look into a still pond of water, like our friend Narcissus here. I'm sure that'll go well for him. Otherwise, you could go the whole day, the whole week, your whole life, never knowing what's going on here. You can see your hands, you can see other people, you can see nature, but this, total mystery. Now, once you get to around the Renaissance, we start being able to predictably reproduce mirrors. And this has a huge effect on the sense of self, which up until then wasn't exactly a thing. Morris Berman, historian, puts it this way: we find a sharp simultaneous increase in self-awareness and in the quantity and technical quality of mirror reproduction. What does that look like? Well, you see an increase in self-portraiture, which of course you would. I can see what I look like, I can paint myself. But you also see an increase in first-person novels, which is weird because we already had the technology for a first-person novel. We had the word I, but suddenly we decided to use that word a lot more often. The other thing you see an increase in is books on etiquette. But because it isn't just, oh, now I can see what I look like to myself, I can see what I look like to other people. And suddenly I get very self-conscious and I want to know how to behave. Now the other thing you see a sharp increase in during this time period, standing armies. Because it isn't just people who get to see what they look like to other people. Nation states get to see what they look like to other nation states. And maybe I look like a tasty treat. So maybe instead of having to raise an army every single time I want to go to war, I'm just going to have one lying around, maybe near the borders. Now that's what you get from a mirror I might see once or twice a day. But what if the entire world were mirrors? What if everywhere I looked I saw myself? That is basically the modern web. I can't go to a single website that isn't custom crafted for me. The website I see is not the website you see. This even happens if I'm not logged in. I go to AP and I am not logged in, but the other day I bought a terabyte drive. So guess what follows me around the web? That 1 terabyte drive that I already have one. Why are you trying to sell me more? Now, it was not always so. If you go far enough back, the web was basically this weird art gallery. People would just post shit, see what happened, right? There was no personalized version, and the Homestar Runner that you see is the Homestar Runner that I see. And to its credit, to this day, Homestar Runner has no logged-in state. It is, in fact, unpersonalizable. And even if I want to see other people, I still have to look at my dumb face. Which is weird, because if Zoom is meant to imitate real life, when's the last time you went to a real-life meeting and held a mirror right here the whole time? The other thing this does is it forces me, because usually these meetings are happening when I'm in my own personal space, to gussy up my own personal space. Now I'm kind of branding myself, right? And we see ourselves, right, as product. Like I am dressing up my home, I'm dressing up myself to look a certain way as I would a product. And the version of myself that's following me around the web, that's being pushed back at me on these websites, is the product version of myself, because it's based on information that's interesting to advertisers. That's the data we're going to use to personalize it, because that's the data advertisers are interested in. And the reason it's that data is because advertisers is how we paid for the personalization in the first place. So it's not even like the real me I'm getting, it's the product version of me. And we do it to ourselves, right? Here am I on Instagram, right? Look at me, I'm in Berlin with my cappuccino, right? I'm doing a brand, right? And the same filters that we use to make ourselves look good are the same filters that advertisers use to make products look good. And Facebook knows this is a bad idea. Their own research showed that girls on Instagram who were productizing themselves and comparing themselves to other girls who were productizing themselves were having horrible mental health and body issues. And the proof is in the term personal brand. How many remember where you were when you first heard the term personal brand? Did you throw up in your mouth a little? And mea culpa, I have a personal brand. Like, you're all here, right? But the word itself, brand, kind of tells you something. Now, why am I so up in arms about personalization? What's the big deal? Well, personalization is done generally in the interest of engagement, right? The more personalized an experience is, we believe, the more engaged you'll be with that content. Why is this a problem? Well, first let's try to define what we even mean by engagement. I don't think anybody's getting married. I don't think anybody is trying to make plans. But in a way, it doesn't really matter how we define engagement. What matters is how we measure it. Because how we measure it is how we get to keep our job. Those numbers going up and to the right is how we get that bonus, how we get to justify our existence on the payroll. And those are things like likes and shares and surveys and ENPS and so on. That is actually what matters. Now, what's the big deal, right? I engage for free with my friends on Facebook, and I give up some personal data that I don't really care about anyway. What could possibly go wrong? Well, one thing is this. Does anybody recognize this guy? How about now? That name ring a bell? Okay, how about now? Cambridge Analytica CEO. So this Orville Redenbacher looking motherfucker took your data and sold it to public firms and political campaigns that you might not necessarily agree with. But I'm going to argue that's not actually the worst that can happen. So I did some work for a company, not too far away from here, a company that had a very large intranet, right? So this is the internet that people use when they're at work. And this is a huge intranet, like 100,000 people on this intranet. And as a result, you have tons of content on this intranet, tons of content that needs engagement. And my job is to help get more engagement for that content. Now, a natural question that arises when you're working on an intranet, and engagement on the intranet, is how much time should your customers, your employees, be spending engaging with content, and how much time, doing their job, because the only place they're looking at this content is at work by definition. Crickets. Nobody had any idea. All they knew is it had to be more. We literally got command from the powers that be saying, make it more social. I swear to God, that was the actual language. Now, I would argue this is not just a problem for an intranet. I would say any platform should ask itself the question, how much time should our users spend on that platform? Because presumably, at some point, they should walk their dog, sleep, spend time with their family, do the dishes, right? But the answer to that question is always more. And really, how would your shareholders answer that question, right? When's the last time you went to a shareholder meeting and everyone was talking about, I'm really worried about our users. Are they doing okay? How's their mental health? Let's see what we can do about that. No, shareholders, generally speaking, have one question. Where's my money? I gave you money, expecting to get a lot of money in return. Where is that money? Why are you not getting it right now? Why are you paying all those people? If you didn't pay them, you could give that money to me. If you fired all of these people, I could have that money. Now, the worst version of this is something called the natural engagement pattern. This is the worst graph I've ever seen in my life. This was produced by Facebook in 2018. And what it basically shows is that as you move from allowed content, your cat videos, to prohibited content, misinformation, hate speech, engagement skyrockets. Now think about that for a second. If your business is raising revenue from ad dollars, and ad dollars go up the more engagement you get. That is what you're actually selling to advertisers, is look at all this engagement, pay us more. And engagement goes up when there's hate speech. Guess what your business is? Misinformation and hate speech. I had a friend who used to work at Facebook, and part of her team's job was to track misinformation. And do you know what one of the key indicators that a piece of content was misinformation? How many times it was shared. The more it was shared, the more likely it was to be misinformation. Our research suggests that no matter where we draw the lines for what is allowed. As a piece of content gets close to that line, people will engage with it more on average, even when they tell us afterwards they don't like the content. Now, the only thing more galling than this quote is who said it. Zuck knew that shit. In 2017, 10,000 Rohingya Muslims were killed during military crackdown in Buddhist majority Myanmar, and Facebook was involved. The survivors sued Facebook, and along with that suit, they wrote an open letter that said Facebook's algorithms amplified hate speech against the Rohingya people, because guess what that hate speech does to engagement? The firm failed to invest in moderators and fact checkers who knew about the political situation in Myanmar. This was not a surprise to anyone. If they had just checked for a day, they would know the impact of that speech. The company failed to take down posts or delete accounts that incited violence against the Rohingya. And when you see some of these posts, you will be shocked they were not taken down immediately. The lawsuit itself said that Facebook was willing to trade the lives of the Rohingya people for better market penetration in a small country in Southeast Asia. And Facebook admitted it. They said, yeah, we did that shit. This is one of the quotes that was on Facebook. And this is another one. No, seriously, fuck engagement. So if that is what a thing-oriented web gets us, what would a people-oriented web get us? And this is where we have to start to think of business as unusual. Now, to go on that journey, we are going to talk about the Siksika. The Siksika are a nation that exists around Alberta and Montana area. They're part of the Blackfoot Confederacy, and they came on my radar because of this guy. Anybody recognize him?
Disney?
How about now? Abraham Maslow. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a basically pop psychology concept that says, okay, we've all got these needs, and they're kind of like the basic needs of like physical safety, and as you kind of move up the ladder, you get to move on to things like love, and at the very tippy top, you've got this notion of this thing called self-actualization. Now, a couple misconceptions about the hierarchy. One, it was never meant to be presented as a pyramid. Some marketing professional and a designer got together and did that way later. The other misconception is that you have to unlock them like achievements. In a video game, it's like you gotta get the physical safety down, then you'll move on to the... No. Maslow believed we were chasing all 5 of these at the same time, all the time. However, more people in a given population had handled like physical safety, and a few less than that, the love. And maybe 10% of any population had actually achieved that tippy-top self-actualization. So Maslow was working on this, and he has a friend living with the Siksika at the time who says, hey Maslow, come on out, live with us for a while. I think it'll help you with your theory. So he does that, and he notices almost right away, it isn't 10% of the Siksika who are self-actualized. It's kind of all of them. The whites in the village, on the other hand, the more I got to know the whites in the village, who were the worst bunch of creeps and bastards I'd ever run across in my life, the more it got paradoxical. So what's happening? Well, first off, the Siksika might not use the term self-actualized. They might use a term more like nitapatapi, which is someone who is completely developed, who has arrived. And more importantly, they don't believe you get there by going on some long vision quest or struggle or suffering. They believe you're born that way. Now think about the impact of that belief, that assumption, on all aspects of life. Childbearing. I don't have to be super strict. I don't have to make you good. You're already good. I have to make sure you don't get eaten by a bear. I have to teach you to fish, but it's actually a very permissive parenting culture. Crime. You didn't commit that crime because you're an evil person who needs to be locked away or maybe even killed. No, you're nitapatapi. Now, we got to figure out why you did that harmful thing. And maybe there's some things that you need to change, but maybe there's some things that we need to change. It begins to look a lot more like restorative or transformative justice. But my favorite thing is what this does to the idea of wealth. For the Blackfoot, wealth was not measured by money and property, but by generosity. The wealthiest man in their eyes is the one who has almost nothing because he has given his all away. They would have giving circles every year. They'd get together and say, oh, you gave that, you gave that, you gave that? Oh, good for you, you're the best, right? Now, again, think about that philosophy's impact on behavior. Let's say you're playing a video game. And the only way to advance in that game isn't to get points. It's to give them away. What are you going to spend a lot of that game doing? Looking for people to give your points to. As a result, Maslow found almost no poverty in the village because the second anyone is down on their luck, everybody swoops in to try to make them whole. So imagine what would happen if we built the web based on the assumption that everyone is good and worth helping. Not just the ones who could give us their data, not just the ones who could give us their money. Another Native American intellectual who enters into this debate is a guy named Kondirong. So it is believed that the Enlightenment, rather than just being a bunch of white dudes in Europe waking up one day and saying, hey, you know what's awesome? Reason, was the result of intellectual debate between Native American intellectuals and European intellectuals. This is one of those intellectuals. His name is Kondirong. He was a Wendat strategist in kind of the Lake Huron area around the 1600s. And he gets to know this French lieutenant named Frontenac, who is so impressed with Kondirong's intellect that he invites his soldiers, his officers, to come and debate Kondirong at his home, and Kondirong wipes the floor with them. It's embarrassing. And this, in turn, starts to inspire things like the European salon. Now, a lot of that Enlightenment discourse gets inspired by the Native American, the indigenous critique of European living. And the indigenous critique of European living goes something like this. I don't understand why you Europeans spend so much time making yourselves miserable trying to get rich. Like, I see you doing it, you do not look happy, and you seem to be only doing it to get rich, and we don't get why you would even want to be rich. Is it because you think you're going to have more power that way? That people are going to do what you say? And to Kondirong, that doesn't make any sense, because where Kondirong comes from, no matter how much money you have, nobody's going to do what you say. They're not going to do what you say if you pay them. They're not going to do what you say if you are nominally their chief. The only way they're going to do what you say is if you convince them it's a good idea. Which is why he was so good at debate. It was the only way to get anybody to do anything. So that baffles him. But more than that, for my own part, I find it hard to see how you can be much more miserable than you already are. What kind of human, what species of creature must Europeans be that they have to be forced to do good and only refrain from evil because of fear of punishment? Again, where Kondirong comes from, you do good because it's, good. He has a theory, though. I have spent 6 years reflecting on the state of European society, and I still can't think of a single way they act that's not inhuman. He does not get them back. And I genuinely think this can only be the case as long as you stick to your distinctions of mine and thine. And the penny literally drops, right? What does distinctions of mine and thine have to do with cruelty? Well, in The Dawn of Everything, David's Graeber and Wengrove say the whole apparatus of trying to force people to behave well would be unnecessary if France did not also maintain a contrary apparatus that encourages people to behave badly. Now, what could that contrary apparatus be? Let's all say it together. Capitalism. Capitalism says, go out and get rich. It is awesome. You're going to love it. People are going to do what you say. Oh my God, you've got to do this. Oh, you know what though? Okay, so don't kill anybody, because I get it. Like, if you kill them, you can take their shit. And like, no, they'll kill you if you do that. Oh, you know what else though? All right, don't steal shit, because yeah, I get it. If you steal it, then you have it, and like we said, get stuff. But just, no, we'll kill you. Oh, and slavery? Let me get back to on that one. This is a graph of the stock price of Facebook from 2012 to 2022. That is the genocide. What did the stock price do? a contrary apparatus. Now, I wrote a book about bias, and so people naturally ask me from time to time, hey, what's your favorite bias? And I'm like, did you read the book? I do, however, have a least favorite bias. The just world hypothesis. The just world hypothesis basically says, we live in a just world. Good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. It's a very simple concept, and it's one of the most destructive concepts you can imagine. And it's one that holds particular weight in the West and even more weight in the US. Because the whole selling point of the United States of America is that it does not matter who your parents are, you raise yourself up. If you want to be a success, you work hard, you will be a success. Your fate is down to you. But that is a double-edged sword. Because if you fail, that also has to be because of you. Are you sick? I guess you didn't take good care of yourself. Are you poor? I guess you're lazy. Did somebody do something horrible to you? Yeah, but then you kind of ask for it, right? These horrible ways of thinking all derive from that just world hypothesis. And the just world hypothesis does a lot of heavy lifting, right? One thing it does is it gives us control. Because if my fate is purely in my hands and there's no big bad system out to get me, well, fine. As long as I work hard and hustle and do 80-hour work weeks, right? And follow all those tips on YouTube, I can make it, right? It's totally down to me. Because it's a lot scarier to think no matter what you do, you're fucked. That's not very comforting. The other thing it does is it absolves me of responsibility for anybody else. Well, you see that person over there? They're not doing so well. Yeah, that's on them. I don't gotta worry about that, right? And in fact, it would be bad for me to help them because they're just gonna spend it on alcohol. I'll make it worse if I try to help them. So no, I should just do my own thing. And what's nice about the just world hypothesis is it keeps us from thinking about systems because if everything is down to your individual action, there isn't really a system. And if we think about systems, well, we start to realize they're corrupt, and we feel obligated to do something about them, and that's scary as hell. Regardless, there are people out there thinking about systems. So, Gabe Weinberg founds DuckDuckGo, which is a search engine in our browser that just doesn't collect any personal information. And he gets called before Congress because there's a bunch of privacy legislation coming down the pike, and Congress is convinced it's going to ruin business. Gabe Weinberg says, not so much. In many ways, I come to you from the future. I run a business that is already GDPR and CCPA compliant. Our privacy policy is straightforward and doesn't require a law degree to decipher. We simply do not collect or share any personal information at all. You want a short terms of service? Don't collect any information. As a privately held company, right, no shareholders to answer to in that sense. Our finances are private, though I'm proud to say we've been profitable using contextual advertising. Contextual advertising. If you search for shoes, guess what kind of ads you get? Since 2014, and last year we earned substantially more than the $25 million revenue floor that subjects the company to CCPA. So these laws don't even kick in unless you're making over $25 million a year. And they're just like, well, we blew past that. I don't know about you, I'd be happy to make $25 million a year. And I can do it without collecting data. And it isn't just us. In New York Times in Europe, switched from behavioral to contextual advertising, it reported an increase in revenue. So maybe even there's a lie to, oh, if you want to make money, you got to be evil. Maybe you make more money doing good. Will Reynolds, another local guy, found Sear Interactive, a search engine optimization firm, and makes two really interesting choices. His custodial staff are full-time employees. So what that means is most places you work, the people who clean the place, maintain the place, are not employees of your company. They do not get to use the gym. They do not get 401k. They do not get health benefits. They work for a third-party company that your company hires to clean the place. Will Reynolds takes a look at that and says, you know what? The folks who are cleaning and maintaining this place contribute to the success of my company just as much as my sales staff, as my programmers, and so on. So why shouldn't they get to collect benefits? So he makes them full-time employees, and now, yes, they do get to use the gym. They do get that 401k. They do get those health benefits. What's more, there is a $65K salary floor. Why? Well, they tell you on the website. We believe everyone, regardless of role level, deserves to make a livable wage. Sound familiar? Everyone is born Vita Patappi. even if it's higher than the market ranges, which is why Sears' livable wage is 31% above market ranges. Now, I'm no economist, but I'm pretty sure one of the core tenets of capitalism is that the market decides the value. Here, Will is saying, no, human dignity will decide the value, and it happens to be 31% higher than what the market says it is. Now you might think, okay, those two guys are CEOs, they can do whatever they want. I'm just an individual contributor. Well, let me tell you what another individual contributor does. Jonathan here goes to he's working for Google. He goes to a Black Lives Matter rally in Oakland, comes home and writes the Black-owned business attribute for Google Maps. Here's another individual contributor. Her name is Sadie Redwing. She was on a podcast with Matt May, formerly of Adobe, talking about how her indigenous culture impacts her design approach and how that approach differs from a lot of her colleagues in three ways. One, she's thinking about the land, thinking about materials, and thinking about reciprocity. So here's what thinking about the lands looks like. She gives the example of maybe she gets hired to come up with the logo for a sports team. And she compares the Seattle Seahawks logo to the Phoenix Suns logo. Now she notes that the Seattle Seahawks logo, so she points out that one of the first things she would ask if she were asked to design that logo would be, tell me about the local flora and fauna. Now, I'm sure all the designers in the room know that's a standard question in any design brief. Tell me about the local flora and fauna. And she says this is a powerful thing because if you look at the Seahawks logo, you get those blues and greens that are evocative of the ocean. You get certain line drawing patterns that are evocative of certain Native American drawing patterns from that region, right? It's really distinctive. Then she points out the Phoenix Suns, which is a basketball and a sun. And she says this is a wasted opportunity because Phoenix has these amazing desert flowers, right, that are unique to Phoenix. The basketball is literally the sport you're playing, and the sun is unique to literally anywhere with access to the Earth's sun. Materials, right? So there's a thing in nature, in science, called biomimicry, and it's the idea that you can draw design inspiration from nature. One of the most famous examples is Velcro. Velcro was inspired by these little burrs that would stick to animal fur to carry the seeds further. Indigenous folks have been all over that forever, and she brings up the idea of, let's say she was asked to design portable shelters, right? And so her colleagues might be thinking about, oh, what about carbon nanofiber, blah, 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 blah. And she would say something like, what about buffalo hides? And they'd be all like, ew. But she'd be like, listen, buffalo are cool in the summer and warm in the winter. But my favorite of these is reciprocity. So let's say we're asked to design the printing press. For most design firms, the job is over when we ship. There might be, some iterations later, but you've shipped, yay, have a party. She says, well, maybe it's not over then. Because maybe I've made the printing press and I'm making books, and I ask myself, where's all the paper for all those books coming from? It literally grows on trees. So maybe the design process isn't over until I've planted a tree. Now, you might think, okay, that's a cool example for like physical products, but I work on the web. But let's say okay, you may or may not know this, but the web, if it were a country, would have the carbon footprint of Germany. So yes, there's absolutely something to give back. Now, I don't know why Will does what he does, why Sadie does what she does. I know for me, a turning point came in 2019 when I was diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety. And I got on the medication, I got on the therapy, best choice I ever made. And in therapy, one of the first questions we tackled was this one: am I a good person? It's a question I would ask myself with every interaction. Every interaction would become a trial. I was on trial. And at the end of that interaction, there would be a verdict. If that went well, I'm a good person. If it went poorly, I am a terrible person. Now, it turns out it's a bad idea to outsource your self-worth. And we came up with a better question. Am I getting closer to my values? I have values. I believe in community. I believe in connection. I believe in curiosity and creativity. In any interaction, in anything, am I getting closer to those values or further away? Now, that is a much more reasonable and answerable question. And I literally made a chart, right? I'm like compassion, connection, creativity. I wrote down these things that I believe in. And they become a metric, right? When I have to make a decision, I can ask myself, which choice is more compassionate? Which choice leads more to connection or further away from it? So We've seen what Will, Sadie, and Gabe are willing to leave money on the table for, what their values are. What are the things you are willing to leave money on the table for? What are the things your company is willing to leave money on the table for? Would your company do business in a country where it's illegal to be gay? Now, when I first wrote that question, I had Saudi Arabia in mind, but now there are certain states of the Union where that is a perfectly valid question. What are the things your shareholders are willing to leave money on the table for? Is there anything your shareholders are willing to leave money on the table for? Now, the shorter that list is, the more ethical your company might be. Let's bring it on home. We must assume that it is good to be connected to the land, to the people, and to our values. Right now, we do not. We only connect to things that will make us money. We've built a web that is indifferent to the land, indifferent to the people, and indifferent to ourselves and our values. We must do better, and I believe we can do better. So, new term alert. Interdependent design. Anytime you announce something new, DJ Khaled has to be there. Interdependent design is a design that prioritizes connection to the land, to other people, and to our values. And it deprioritizes connection to money, to acquisition, and to rampant growth. And what I like about this term is that interdependence, unlike inclusion or some of these other terms, isn't something we have to reach for. Interdependence just is. We live in an interdependent world. I walk outside, I breathe out. The tree breathes that in, breathes out something I can breathe. And that is so simple that we don't even have to think about it, right? We are fundamentally interdependent, so let's just live and design that way. In fact, there's really just a bunch of stuff we have to pull away that gets us away from being interdependent. So, what if engagement were measured by the number of people helped? And let's talk about personalization. Now, in even the nicest versions of the Narcissus myth, he basically dies by burning to death because he is burning with passion for this dude in the lake he can't get with. So what if the web that reflected back to me was the real me, not the product version of me? What if the thing that followed me around the web wasn't a terabyte drive, but my values? What if the web reflected back to me was the land where I live, reminded me of the touching of the grass? By the way, the more time people spend in nature, the smaller they make themselves in selfies. That just seems relevant. What if the web reflected back to me was people I can help? A friend of mine was ordering something from Uber Eats, and his child said to him, "Hey, that's great. Can we also get something for that guy down the road who doesn't have a place to live?" "Yeah, can we?" "And Uber Eats, why didn't you tell me about that?" What kind of a web would Kandirov's assumptions build? What kind of a web would Siksika assumptions build? And why is it Tumblr? So in the longer version of this talk, I go deep on this, but suffice it to say, Twitter is stand-up. Tumblr is improv. I'll just leave it at that. But if you want to find me later, I will talk your head off about this. I know this is uncertain, all right? I can't give you a step-by-step formula of how to go from the world of thing-oriented to the world of people-oriented. I wish I could. But here's the thing. We kind of like uncertainty, right? I mean, if you're a designer and your client comes to you and says, "Yo, I threw this together in Figma last night. Let's do this." No. Okay, let me tell me what you need to accomplish. Let me figure it out. And if you're a developer, you love it when the client just comes up with a big sheet of code and says, "Just type this." No, tell me what you're trying to accomplish. Tell me the parameters, and let me figure it out. I'm going to show you this scene. Hopefully it will work, and I hope it resonates with you the way that it does with me. All you really need to know for context is that Nicolas Cage is talking to a former employee about the restaurant the employee has just opened. Oh.
What is the concept here?
Well,
We're interested in taking local ingredients native to this region and just deconstructing them, making the familiar feel foreign, thereby giving us an even greater appreciation of food as a whole.
This is the kind of cooking you like?
It's cutting edge. It's very exciting.
Exciting.
I mean, everybody loves it.
You like cooking
Absolutely.
it? Derek, what was it you always used to talk about opening? Wasn't it a pub?
Everyone loves it here. It's a huge success.
Why didn't you open your pub?
I don't know that I really wanted. It's such a long time ago.
When I fired you, I asked you what you wanted to do. You said you had a few rooms upstairs. A real English pub.
Did I say that?
Yes.
Nobody wants pubs around here. It's just a terrible investment.
What was going to be your signature dish?
There were Scotch eggs with a honey curry mustard.
They're not real. You get that, right? None of it's real. The critics aren't real. The customers aren't real. Because this isn't real. You aren't real.
Okay.
Derek, why do you care about these people? They don't care about you. None of them. They don't even know you. Because you haven't shown them. Every day you'll wake up and there'll be less of you. You live your life for them and they don't even see you. You don't even see yourself. We don't get a lot of things to really care about.
So I've got some homework for you. After this is over, you go home, just get out a sheet of paper and a pen, and write down what it is you believe in. What are those few things you get to care about? What are those things that when you're doing them, you're showing the world the real you? And then I want you to look at what you're doing and see how are those things getting you closer to or further away from that list. And if they're getting you further away, what are just one or two small things you can do to get just a little bit closer? And I want us to co-imagine the future with the people who are hurt by the present. Now, the forces I'm asking you to fight, patriarchy, capitalism, just ideas. Somebody came up with them and they caught on and they made the world a worse place. But so is everybody is born Nita Patapi. That was just an idea and it caught on and it made the world a better place. So my question for you is, what's your idea? You know, when I first wrote this talk, I got to that line and I'm like, yeah, mic drop. That's But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that's the wrong question. It's too neat, too simple. And in a way, it just gets us right back around to personalization. So I'm ending with a harder, but I think more important, meaningful question. What's our idea? What's the idea that we're going to come up with together? Not just the people in this room, but the people outside the room who've been hurt by design, maybe even by some of our designs. Because that's the idea that's actually going to change the world. Thank you. So just to make this ironically capitalist, you can in fact get no seriously fuck engagement.